Welcome to the Aging Boomers. This is podcast number 2. At the Aging Boomers, this is where we discuss many of the issues facing an aging population. And I'm your host, Frank Sampson, and thrilled to have you aboard. We're real excited about this. I've been doing a radio show for some time now, and now we're kind of taking it out to the internet waves all over. And I'm really excited about our guest today because he happens to be not only a good friend of mine and somebody I work with in the healthcare industry, but he and I have been doing a radio show together. So I'd like to introduce Bob Nations with Senior Helpers. Bob, great to have you on.
Hey, it's great to be on, Frank, and be part of your new venture in this broadcasting podcast on the internet. I think it's an excellent idea.
Yeah, I know when you started your recent radio show, I know you got a couple of them going on. You were nice enough to have me as your first guest. I tried to get you on as my first, so I apologize. You were number 2. But,
yeah, I kind of noticed you said number 2, and I was like, what? Number 2? I don't want to be number 2. I want to be number 1.
I know it. Well, you're number 1 in my heart. How's that?
I got you. I got you.
Right. Okay. So I know we've certainly talked about your organization in the past, but first time we're talking about this on the podcast on the Aging Boomers. So why don't you tell our listening audience a little bit about not only senior helpers, but in-home care, and certainly there's just such a tremendous growth in in-home care, and maybe explain the different types of in-home care and help our audience just understand things a little better.
Well, I mean, I guess the place to start is to tell you a little bit about who I am. I mean, I spent 30 years in the toy business and retired and was looking for what my next venture was going to be because I was only 50 years old. And so I found this concept of in-home care, and I thought, wow, that would be really interesting. And it really resonated with me because I was very close with my grandmother, and she had started showing signs of Alzheimer's, and actually fell and broke her hip in her home. And when it was time for her to get released from the hospital, we didn't know what to do. So my mom and I got together and we moved her into a nursing home. And with that nursing home stay, she knew that her whole life, whenever one of her friends moved into the nursing home, that's where they stayed. And we added to that belief because in order to pay for her nursing home care, we had to sell her home. So within about 6 months, she passed away. And, as I reflect back on it today, I'm sure it was because she just gave up. She had signs of Alzheimer's. She had just had a broken hip, and 6 months she was gone because she didn't want to live there, and she knew that. So she just gave up. And so when I came across this concept of home care, I thought, oh, that would be interesting for me because I could help people and not have people give up, prematurely or give up before their time like my grandmother had done. So in honor of my grandmother, I started researching home care and came across this company called Senior Helpers and other companies that I investigated. But the reason why I chose Senior Helpers was because, number one, as a marketing professional, I like the name. And number two, it's my business. Even though I'm associated with, a franchise system that operates nationwide, and the fact that it's my business and I'm running my business and having a good time of it. And what it is we do non-medical home care. And what that means is that we go to a person's living environment, whether that's an apartment or residential home, or in some cases even an assisted living, or we've even been hired to work in nursing homes. We go to into that environment and help them do whatever they need that is non-medical. Non-medical is kind of a gray area because we do bathing, dressing, we do med management, we can check blood pressure, those kinds of things. But the medical side of it is doing injections or doing physical therapy or doing speech therapy or occupational therapy. Those are all medical-oriented things that we don't do. Now, we can follow the direction of a licensed professional that does those medical things, but we can't do those on our own. So that's a non-medical home care agency, and we operate in 7 counties here in Northern California, and and do so, and it's a very rewarding business for us.
Yeah, so there are companies out there, though. There's, like yours, but their concentration is on the medical side of things, right?
That's correct. Yeah, those are known in the industry as home health agencies, and a home health agency can go into those same environments and do the medical side of things. And typically, what those people, there are two types of home health agencies. Those are the ones that strictly follow the Medicare rules, and there's the ones who do Medicare and what's called private pay. Well, the Medicare rules with home health is they cannot do continuous care. What they can do is go into a home or a home environment and help somebody for a short term. In that, if they, in the case of my grandmother, she's fallen and broken her hip. Now, she's come home and the doctor ordered physical therapy. She could, in fact, move back to her home now and get physical therapy done through a physical therapist in the home. And do that up until the point where she no longer needs it, and she also needs to show progression. So typically Medicare will approve physical therapy in the home for about 60 days of time, and that physical therapist comes a couple times a week and works with the individual and gets them back up on their feet. So that's a home health agency. Now, home health agency sometimes will also do the private care things, which means Medicare will pay for parts of it, and then you have to pay privately for the other parts of it. The other type of agency that goes into people's homes that we work a lot with is the hospice organizations. There's hospice, and that's when someone has it's been determined that their life is shorter, and they may be in a position where they're going to start experiencing pain and discomfort, and so a family would bring in a hospice agency to help manage the pain and manage the last months or years of a person's life.
Well, that's, I'm sure we have listeners out there that are thinking, well, mom or dad or maybe another loved one may need, whether now or in the future, some sort of assistance at home. So what's your suggestion where people begin? Where do they start? Many people have never dealt with this before, so it could be the first time. So where do they turn? Where do they start?
Well, I mean, a couple of things that are known facts here in the United States, that 80% of the U.S. population wants to remain in their home for as long as possible. The other thing is that we know that people as we age are likely to get at least three chronic problems, arthritis being number one. So that lends to a spot where people aren't going to keep the same lifestyle or the same things that they've been doing in the past. And I'm just going to use arthritis as an example because it's the number one chronic illness in our country. Is because I've got arthritis, I may not be keeping my house up to the same level as I always have. I'm a really neat person. And so in that case, it could very well be having someone come in and help do the housework is a service that a non-medical home care agency might do. But also because of my arthritis, I'm not cooking, and therefore I'm not eating as well as I used to. Well, that starts the vicious cycle that you start spiraling down, because when you stop eating as well as you always have, then in fact your health starts deteriorating. So the best thing to do is for people to start when they first start noticing signs that I'm not eating as well, I'm not eating as often, and I'm not keeping my house up. If you start seeing signs like that, particularly family members that are going to visit mom and she kept this immaculate house, and all of a sudden she's not doing that, and then when you look at her refrigerator and there's no real food in there, those are signs that, she may need some help. Because what's happening today is most of the time people don't call for help until something tragic's happened. Going back to my grandmother. My grandmother was in her home. She fell and broke her hip. She ended up in the hospital. Well, now that's when people typically start going, oh, my gosh, what am I going to do now? And that's when they contact my company. What we try and do is educate people that up front, so we don't get to the point. Because there's a chance that in my grandmother's case, and I don't remember all those years ago, but if she wasn't eating as well as she used to, it may have made her weaker. Therefore, that's how she fell and broke her hip. Well, if my family had called a home care agency like mine back then, and we'd gotten in there and made sure she was eating better, making sure her house was clean better, and hindsight's a great thing. She may not have broken her hip, and therefore she wouldn't have needed our services because she wouldn't have got to the hospital. So what we try and do is educate adult children and also the older population about what we do as a service. And when people start changing their patterns, then that's the time to call us and get us involved. Don't wait till the tragedies happen and now you've ended up in the hospital and you need help. Although we do respond to that as well.
So somebody calls, senior helpers, whether it be in your area here in Northern California or anywhere else in the country. There's locations all over. But, they want to be sure, so maybe they call another company or they get a referral of another company, and they're going to talk to you and they're going to talk to somebody else, okay? So how does a family what types of questions should they ask? What types of things should they be looking at to kind of compare and make sure that they have the right fit?
Well, the first question that I would there are several questions, and I'm glad you asked that because that's really important. No matter who you're hiring or who you're talking to, whether it's through an agency and or hiring somebody that's privately, you've run an ad in the paper and you've got somebody coming in the home. The things that you need to find out about is, number one, is do they have experience? I mean, do they know how to do certain things? Because if in fact they don't know how to do certain things, then they could in effect end up hurting someone. Secondly, is what kind of background do they have? In the case of hiring an individual, you can go down to your local government agency and ask to see if they would perform a background check. If you're hiring an agency, ask them, do you do a background check? But don't stop there. Ask them what type of background check. When I first started my business, I would ask my competitors if they did background checks, and they'd say, oh, yeah, we do background checks. And then I'd say, well, what kind of background check do you do? And they would say, well, we do references. And I'm like, well, is that really a background check? Oh, no, yeah, of course it is. Well, that's not a background check to me because, number one, I've always believed, when I ask for references, what fool would give me a reference that's going to say anything bad about you, right? So that's not a really thorough background check. So what you want to do is you want to find out what kind of background check they're doing. And what I look for is a company that's doing a background check that's going actually down to the county records and seeing if this person has had any violations, whether that's criminal activity, going to the Department of Motor Vehicles and determining what their driving record is, so that you get a really good sense of who this person is. Because as we all know, in the interview process, you're going to put your best foot forward because you want the job, and you're going to tell me what I want to hear. Well, what I want to see is what I can find out about you. So it's very simply, at Senior Helpers here in my company, we do three different kinds of background checks. Number one is we do fingerprinting, which allows us to find out from the Department of Justice here in California whether that person has had any criminal activity. We also do a national search because if this person I'm talking to today at hiring has lived in Alabama for the last 10 years and just recently moved to California, well, my California background check through the Department of Justice is not going to tell me that. So what I've got to do is go and access a national database to find out what their activities were in Alabama. So that's important. And my third is what kind of driving record. Because that's important because that gives you all kinds of different little signals. Because if you've got somebody who's consistently getting ticketed, well, what kind of judgment are they using? Because if they're consistently getting ticketed, then they're not using good judgment, and will they use good judgment when they're taking care of your mom? And last but not least, if they've got a pattern of drinking while intoxicated, which shows up, of course, on their DMV, that's not a person you really want somebody driving around your mom either. So those are the kinds of things that I recommend. But the next thing is make sure that the agency that you're working with is an agency that employs the caregiver that they're talking to you about, because there's two different kinds of agencies that you could be talking to. There's one that's called a referral agency, where you may be hiring a caregiver from them, but in fact you as the homeowner become the employer. So in that case, then you're responsible for them for paying into their taxes. If they fall in your home and get hurt, you're responsible for their medical bills. And I always believed, before I got into this business, someone comes to my home and falls or gets hurt, I just call my homeowners and my homeowners covers it. Well, that's not the case. Homeowners state that if you have a person coming in your home on a one-time basis, your homeowner's chances are would cover someone getting hurt. But if you have someone consistently coming in your home, in this case taking care of your mom, then in fact your homeowners will not take care of that expense. So it becomes a liability that you've brought into yourself or brought upon yourself by hiring somebody and having them consistently come into your mom's home and they fell on the kitchen floor and hurt themselves. So you got to be careful of that kind of thing. Also, you don't want the government come looking for you for any back taxes that may be owed if you are the employer of record. In the case of my agency, all of my caregivers are my employees, so it's my responsibility to make sure that the taxes are paid, make sure they're covered under workman's comp. So if a caregiver is in your mom's home tonight, one of my caregivers in your mom's home tonight is making dinner, and they cut off their finger, God forbid, then they're not going to tell your mom about it. Well, they might tell your mom about it, but it's not your mom's responsibility to do anything about it. They call me, I get them to the doctor, I pay for their doctor bills under our workman's comp. So that's another thing to consider. Last but not least is you want to make sure the person's bonded and insured. And those are different. I always thought, well, maybe those were the same, but those are different because if there's a problem in that the person coming in the home breaks something, then you want to make sure that they have insurance in order to cover the breakage or the loss of that. If you have someone who comes in the home and steals, again, God forbid that happens, and then that's why you want them to be bonded, so you know that they're covered for that kind of expense. So those are the kinds of things that and last but not least, you also want to know if in fact that caregiver's covered if they're driving mom to the doctor and they get an automobile accident. Who's responsible for that? So those are the kinds of things and questions you should be asking is one, are you a referral agency or are you the employee of record? What kind of background checks you do? What do you have a workman's comp? Do you have are you insured and bonded? And what's the experience and training of the caregivers? So those are all things that need to be considered when you're hiring somebody to take care of your mom.
So those are great points, and I think without even a family asking specifically, if you hear probably, I would think one company charging so much per hour and another company charging quite a bit less per hour, that will kind of tell you that not all things are included in the lower price. So there's a lot more risk involved.
Well, that's definitely a red flag. If you find a big discrepancy in prices between agencies, chances are that agency you're talking to at the lower end is a referral agency, and all they're doing is referring a person to you. And when that person becomes into employment, that person is your employee, not their employee. If on the other side, if you've got a company that's charging more money, then in fact the reason why they're probably charging more money is because they are paying the taxes and because they are paying workman's comp and they are paying insurance to protect your mom in case something goes wrong.
Right. Well, that's great. So, I want to talk about something else with you, but before we do, if somebody wanted to learn more about Senior Helpers, contact you, how would they go about doing that?
Well, our website, seniorhelpers.com, and we do operate in Sonoma County, so you could do seniorhelpers.com/Sonoma or /Napa or /Solano, depending on what area you're in, and we have offices in all those locations. Our main number in our office is 707-251-1540.
And if they're outside your area, they could just go to seniorhelpers.com and put in their location, and it will connect them to somebody.
That's right.
Okay.
You can either put in your city, your zip code, your state, and you can find us.
All right, good. So you've got a background, as you mentioned earlier, in the toy business, and
correct.
It seems like you may be taking some of your past experience and present experience in the senior care industry and maybe combine the two, because I see that you're starting up another organization. Is it called Minds? What's it called?
Minds on Memory.
Minds on Memory.
Minds on Memory. And here's what's happening. The normal aging process, we all go through this. When we get to be about 40 years old, our brain starts to shrink. And as we start going through life, we start developing routines. Well, routines are good because they help us manage our life, but they're really bad for our brain, because what ends up happening is that we, in effect, go on autopilot. I can't tell you how many times I talk to people And I just did this myself the other day, where I was driving down the street and I meant to go to Starbucks to have a cup of coffee because I was driving down the street that leads to my office. I went straight to the office, and when I got to the parking lot, I was like, wow, I was meant to get a coffee before I got here, so I had to double back because I went on autopilot, because I was going through well, that's what we do is routines that we don't think about. Well, because our brain is like a muscle, any muscle in our body, the less we use it, the less it works. So what we've done in knowing that is, and through the course of my experience with the toy business, is we've actually developed games that we offer to the public to play. And the reason why they're games that are specific to the older population is because they're designed to be simpler but challenging for an older person. Because one of the things that I've learned is, I'm 75 years old and I was a captain of industry. Well, the last thing that I want to do is play a game that makes me feel dumb. But in order for me to be really actively using my brain for the benefit of that, I need to be challenged. So we designed games specifically for an older person who needs to be challenged but not made feel dumb about it. So we have a line of 13 games that we have on the marketplace that will be in the marketplace soon, that are activity games. And the other aspect of it is, as we grow older, we also start to isolate because we're not as healthy as we used to be. So what our games do is encourage you to invite friends over or play games with family, because that's another thing that we need to do as we grow older, is we need to stay in contact with family and friends. That's very important to our livelihood. So our games are games that you play with other people with, not games you play on a computer. Games you play on a computer have value. They definitely stimulate the brain, but it doesn't create the same kind of value solution that you need in order to keep your socialization up. So we have a line of games that you play with other individuals. You have fun, you're challenged, but you're not made to feel stupid.
So when you say older, are you talking like older like your age or older like my age?
Well, it's a good question, Frank, because you're quite a bit older than I am. So yes, they're actually designed to be played with when you're 50 plus, because in the testing that we've done is we tested them out with people that were 50 plus. And
so middle age, not quite older.
Middle aged, right? Exactly. Yeah, these aren't games that a kid would play necessarily, but these are games that would challenge you and I. And I know there's a big age discrepancy between the two of us, but they would challenge you and I in the same course of playing a game.
You're so funny.
You had to bring that up, didn't you?
Yeah. So tell our audience, how do they get information on this, and how long has it been around?
It's something that's been in development for quite a while, and we just actually launched our website and our Facebook page here recently, and it's really easy. You just go Mind, M-A-N-D, a Z, Mind, and then O-N, and then Memory. Mind on Memory with a Z in it. So mindonmemory.com. That brings you to our website, and you can either subscribe to games that come to you online that you can use with your family and friends, or in the near future, you'll be able to buy a box game like, I'll use Monopoly as an example. You can buy a Monopoly version type of game that you play with your family that's geared toward more of the older population.
So is this available in retail stores? Is it only available online?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. That's coming. That's got the coming soon part of it coming.
That's the coming soon. So you got to keep us up to date on what's happening with it. So I mean,
yeah,
are they board
when I've got
games?
Retail games. We'll get back on the radio and talk about them in more depth.
Great. Are they board games, or are they all different types?
They're different types. Primarily, most of them are card type of games because we want them to be inexpensive, and we want you to buy several of them. Because that's a very interesting question. The other element is that you want to do things differently. So each game that we designed are games to challenge you in a different way. Like example would be, if you are really good at doing crossword puzzles, that's great until you get good at it. So what we've done is designed our game so that you have 4 of them at a time, and you play with one each day. Well, that's going to challenge a different part of your brain. Therefore, it's going to continue to keep you challenged as opposed to getting really good at one of them.
Yeah.
So we want to keep them inexpensive.
Yeah, that's correct. As soon as you get like in your 50, 60 in that zone, that's when you really got to start challenging your mind. I know that I talked about this on this previous interview, and people retire and someone who says, well, I'm going to just, play golf, and they've played golf their whole life. That's not challenging themselves.
That's correct.
So I think that's great what you're doing. So go ahead and tell our audience again, both Senior Helpers and Minds on Games, how they reach you.
It's seniorhelpers.com, and you can go in and look for the Napa, Sonoma, or Solano office, or Minds on Memory. That's
I'll get that straight.
MINDZ.
Yeah, I'll get that straight. Minds on Memory. Okay. All right,
Minds on Memory, and that can give you access to our series of games.
Great. Well, Bob, as always, thanks so much, and I know we'll have you on again soon, and best of luck to you and to everything that you're doing.
Well, we'll talk soon, Frank, and good luck with this new venture with podcasts.
Great. Thanks so much, and thank you all for listening. I'm your host, Frank Sampson, on the Aging Boomers. You could get more information on my company at seniorcareauthority.com. You could also listen to all the podcasts and my previous radio shows at www.theagingboomers.com. So be safe out there, and we'll talk to you next week.